Grog.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sardish Dead podcast. I'm Matthew Weir, and I'm joined again this week by Kerry Warbis. We are still Peter Ficklingless. He's still in a field somewhere, isn't he, Kerry?
He is. I was going to make a terrible joke then about him being intense.
Oh, I thought you were going to make a joke about him being outstanding in his field.
He's both of those things, isn't he? He's intense and outstanding in a field or five.
He is. Well, I mean, given that this last week we were saying that he was very secretive about his location, we know at least that this is Thursday, that he's in Leicester, right?
Who'd have thought you could camp in Leicester in a yurt? That just shows my prejudiced imaginings of Leicester.
Yeah, he's a bit, it's all a bit spiritual home, isn't it, where he is?
We've seen a picture, haven't we, of his yurt?
Yeah.
And he was cooking some burgers, it looked like, outside the tent, outside the yurt.
Well, he came briefly back to civilization and cooked half of the UK's supply of crumpets and pikelets, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And then went back and then he's gone back to nature.
Yes.
So anyway, sure, he's having a nice break wherever he is. It wasn't the fine finesse edit last week of the podcast, but we got there. You know, things like I just couldn't be bothered to take that motorbike out when Kerry was telling the story about Michael Sheen, mainly because it's just two of us talking, isn't it? And it's very hard to just kind of cut one of those things when it's two people back and forth.
Yeah, especially as I did say, oh, there goes a motorbike. So
yeah.
And I thought it was great. You did a fabulous job, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier by definition when it's two voices, isn't it? I think. I mean, I think once you've got three and sometimes even four voices, it's going to be harder. I did take out that car alarm early on, though.
Oh, Kerry. Well done. I didn't. Yeah, good man.
When I say take it out, I don't mean I went out into the street in Brighton and ripped the wires from the dash. I edited it out. So yeah, so that's where we are. Hopefully everything goes as smoothly this week as it did last week. So we've been lurching from not exactly the sublime to the ridiculous, but the ridiculous and the traumatic on the Archers recently, haven't we? And I felt that last week was quite silly, and then this week there was the heaviness of the Alice thing. We'll obviously come to all these points as we go through the show. And we invest, as much as we joke about it, we invest a little bit in these characters. And every now and again I stop myself and I think, who's the next Nigel? Who's the next John? Or, and then I start to worry about if we're going to lose one of these characters. And I think all of us as a community on Monday, we all had pause and we all stopped and held our breath when the lovable Shula fell off a horse. So we're very cruel.
Oh, that was funny.
I'll confess, I rewound and listened to that bit where she came off the horse at least 7 times.
We're always cruel about Shula, aren't we? It was funny because on Twitter, there were so many people going, oh, just a broken arm, or oh, I thought she wouldn't be able to speak again, or oh, isn't she dead straight away?
I mean, and there was a lot all throughout this week. There was, when people were talking about it, David was saying it, Jenny and Brian were saying, Neil was saying, imagine if it had been worse. And I was just sat there like, why do they keep pouring over this? So they're like, yeah. Imagine if it had been really bad, if the horse's ass had landed on her head or something.
But that's exactly what all of the listeners were doing, imagining it being worse, because we wished it had been. I did say, I tweeted about, I'd at least half hoped that she would have come round from the concussion speaking Chinese or something, like you read about in the papers.
Yes, I was thinking she was going to have some kind of epiphany and her eyes would open and she'd been like, Neil, there's no God.
Yes, she'd seen the light at the end of the tunnel and who was at the end of it, and it wasn't God.
It was wholly bizarre, wasn't it? And then Neil's there. I mean, Jazzer's off to guide the ambulance into the field. Neil's staying with her because he's all over the place. And how exciting it is to actually see someone you're talking to on horseback and wave to them from the other side of a field. Jazzer got very excited about that.
Yeah, that was so odd. Oh, is that you that I can see on the other side of the field? Hi. Calm down, Jesus.
It was very good of Shula to actually remain on the call for the entire fall as well, wasn't it? She was like all of her anguished screaming as she was thrown from the horse. She seemed to have her phone up against her ear the whole time.
What's it called? Rolly, wasn't it?
Rolly,
calm down,
yes.
Rolly, Rolly. Yeah, something spooked him. And later she said it was possibly the smell of the pigs that had spooked the horse. Has she never taken a horse round the farmland of pig world that Neil
Strange.
inhabits?
Yeah. I mean, Neil himself was... The smell of the pigs came up a couple of times this week, didn't it? Because there was all that chat about Susan makes him have 2 showers before they get down to business in the evening.
Or don't get down to business.
Or don't get down to business, yeah.
2 showers Neil. That's what his nickname is.
Exactly. I used to work on the fish section of a restaurant, and I would have 1 shower when I got home, which would allow me to socialise. And then I would have another shower before climbing into bed, just as a common courtesy.
Oh, that's very sweet of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of did it for myself as well.
But I think it was interesting that they were pointing this out, weren't they, with their usual sort of sledgehammer, that Jazzer's getting loads of sex and Neil isn't getting any sex. Not only is he not getting any sex, but his missus thinks he smells. So you could tell early on, that was like Monday's episode, wasn't it, that Neil's not getting much sleep for very different reasons to Jazzer not getting very much sleep.
Tracy comes home from the fete. We don't know what she's doing. What's the fete business that she's involved in as well? She's off in a meeting about the fete. She comes home and there's nothing that gets her more in the mood than a fete meeting, which she's absolutely gagging for. So Jazzer has to stay up half the night satisfying her, and then has to skip breakfast the next morning because he's so shagged out.
She brought him a lovely sandwich though, didn't she? Even Neil was even jealous of that, wasn't he?
You know, he started to think maybe he'd hooked up with the wrong sister. You know, like sex until the small hours, and then a bacon sandwich brought to you at work the next day.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he?
But yeah, he was very much of the idea that, you know, Susan has kept the house running, and she's held it all together. But at the same time, he just seems completely willfully distracted by Shula.
Yeah.
All right, I mean, I know she came off the horse, but even before that, he was fussing over her. And I thought the bit that followed after she'd broken her arm and she was home, when he brought round the lasagna for her, and even that started to become a little bit of sexual, the way he was talking about it. Like, let me just warm this lasagna through for you. And then we're suspecting initially, or I think they want us to believe, first of all, she's more worried about the gossip. But as it goes on, you start to think there's more to it than this. And is Neil actually the unwitting partner in all of this? And is Shula the devil woman? who's after that Carter ass, and she can't get it out of her mind.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's
why
what it is.
Shula's been so weird all these years. She's been containing herself, her lust for Neil.
She spurned a young Neil, didn't she? Years ago. Anyone who's, I mean, it's slightly before my time, even as a human, I think. But, you know, you can find those clips up on YouTube where she's very condescending to Neil when they're in their teens or in their early 20s.
Yeah. I think Daddy didn't like the idea, did he?
Deep down, all her life, that's what Shula's been waiting for. I also thought there might have been a mild chance that Alistair was going to put her to sleep when he came round.
Yeah, Alistair, he was detectivising, wasn't he? Going, I see a ladder underneath a dead light bulb that has been left in rather a hurry. I deduce that Neil has been in your home again.
Yes, Neil with the ladder in Shula's house. So yeah, I mean, we'll come back round to this, but as we said there, Rory coming out to Brian and Jenny during a game of Cluedo.
Oh,
what did we think?
Absolutely loved that scene. Every single thing about it. I really like those domestic scenes where, I've said this before on the podcast, where it's just a little bunch of people round a dinner table having food, or in this case, they had food and then they played a board game. And it's just the intimacy. You could hear the dice rolling and the dice shaker, and just quiet conversations. I think you can learn so much about the people. Brian and Jenny played a blinder, I think, not just in the Cluedo, but I just loved how it was written, the little lead up to I thought my children would be able to tell me anything. And Rory, well, I can tell you anything. And they carried on playing the game. Because poor Brian, he'd admitted, hadn't he, that he'd been an abject failure as a parent, and Rory was trying to stick up for Brian, which was quite nice, I thought.
Yeah, he gave them both quite a hard time, didn't he? I mean, he said, like, at least we did a good job with Rory. Like, he was just writing off all the other kids from both of their previous dalliances or marriages or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was that moment where he was like, well, first of all, Rory was comforting them, and Rory is brilliant at this, isn't he? Where he was just saying, it's not your fault what happened to Alice. It's not. God, I sounded like I was tearing up then.
Are you okay?
I just kind of lost my breath for a second.
Sounded like Neil then, looking at Shula.
It's so beautiful. It was good, wasn't it? Because they kept on referring to this thing, and this is going to come back to what we were saying last week. Is he going to pass his A-levels? I'm starting to suspect there might be a twist in the tail here, but because they're very much bigging him up about how much work has gone into it. But they said, you did all this with all this chaos in the family. It's like, well, it is only really Alice, isn't it? That's the chaotic element. They don't really seem to know. Has the whole Adam and Ian thing just come out and nobody's mentioned that it's come out? I feel like sometimes they're referencing turmoil with Adam and Ian, but we've never heard
them actually speak
Jenny
about it. Yeah, I know. And also, I was thinking, why is Rory at Adam and Ian still when Alice isn't there? Why were they? I know that they were. Jenny and Brian were babysitting Xander, weren't they? Which is why they'd gone round for the sausage cassoulet, which is actually a ragu with the lemon to make it lighter, so that he can impress his uni mates. Really, will sausage ragu be made? It tended to be sort of those little packets of noodles from Chinese supermarkets for 30p, so you can spend everything else on beer.
I shared a house with a guy that used to throw the flavoured packets out of those noodles because he thought it was like the desiccant that you're not supposed to eat. So he was just boiling the noodles in water.
No way.
And throwing out the little flavouring sachet. And then one day, I think it was actually one of my other flatmates pointed out and was like, why did you think they all had different flavours on the packets, but everyone you ate tasted exactly the same? So
what was he studying at uni?
I don't know. Maybe he's one of these people who fell off a horse and lost his taste buds. It does happen, doesn't it?
God, that's sad. So, but also, so why is he there? Wondered that. Obviously, we later find out, Chris is going to bring old Alice home or something. So she hasn't been away that long, has she?
No, I think it's just general upheaval, isn't it? Alice has only just gone. And as we found out today, it was a flash in the pan, but there was always this, I think it was just one extra piece of turmoil that Rory didn't need, being turfed out again and going all the way back. So I think they just thought it was better to leave him where he was.
I guess, yeah.
So when he comes out mid Cluedo, I mean, I thought at the time, have they taken this really well or have they taken it really badly? I couldn't tell initially. And Jenny was the first one to react, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And she just said something like, "Oh, well, that's great."
Yeah, she said, "Bisexual. Right. That's really great, isn't it, Brian?"
And then Brian was just like, "What?" Colonel Mustard in the drawing room with the lead pipe on bisexual dad. Yeah, I know.
I loved it so much. Brian then was kind of going, "I don't care what you are, as long as you're happy." And Jenny was like, You are happy, aren't you, darling?" And he is. He is happy. Yeah.
They were saying afterwards, like, it was quite good that Brian, some of the comments he made would definitely not be considered PC by some corners of society, where he said, our children don't do normal.
Yeah.
And then Jenny had to pull him up and say, well, he's normal. There's nothing abnormal about being bisexual, and he admitted, I'm a dinosaur, and
You know me, Jenny.
yeah.
Oh, I can't cope with all this modern language.
Next episode is going to be them at the breakfast table, and he's, Rory, are you a top or a bottom?
Oh, I totally loved it. They were great. Well done, Rory. Hilarious as well. Very, very well written. Oh, also, I liked the bit later on. I think it was in tonight's episode, the Thursday one, where just Brian and Jennifer were talking to each other about the whole thing, sort of going, so what do you really think, Brian? And he was moaning that the sausage cassoulet was too lemony or something.
Yeah, that was as they were closing out Wednesday's episode, wasn't it? Because that was
Oh,
when
was it?
she said, it just never stops, this
The
ongoing worry.
worrying.
And he was
Yeah.
I was like, no, it never does. I was like, well, we're all going through this, you bastards. We listen to it 4 times a week. It's going to be 5 times a week again in a couple of weeks' time.
There was a splendid moment, though, when Brian and Jennifer were talking to each other. He said something like, I won't pretend to understand. And Jenny went, it means he likes men and women. And it made me think of, in Airplane, where people go, this woman has to be gotten to a hospital. And he goes, a hospital? What is it? It's a big building with patients.
Yeah. Classic Leslie Nielsen humour, isn't it?
Yes. It made me think of that.
There was a little part of me which really hoped that Brian just thought that Rory was trying to put him off his game.
Yes.
Yeah, pull the other one, bisexual.
Yeah, we never found out who won the game, actually, did we?
Well, Rory was kicking their ass, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was the student who had now become the master.
Oh, that's right.
As he
Yeah.
referred to himself.
True.
He was winning all over on Wednesday's episode. So anyway, I'm glad that's out, and I'm glad that obviously we can temper it all those years ago with Brian's reaction to Adam, and we've got those two ends of the spectrum. So it's good that I feel like they've kind of closed that off a bit there as well.
Yeah, he admitted, didn't he, that he isn't proud of his reaction to Adam, and he wouldn't make that same mistake again. So it was good to hear him say that.
What are they talking about when the exception of the obvious one, a long list of parenting failures? I didn't think that was very fair, really.
Yeah, when he said 1 in 4 has been okay, and you think,
Yeah.
well, what's wrong with Debbie?
Yeah.
Kate, obviously, a bit of a write-off.
Yeah, good point. Actually, I take it all back. What a shower of freaks!
I know. And then Alice, yeah, maybe he's got a point. There's only Debbie, really, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, is he including Adam in that as well?
Yeah, I think so. Because Adam's a thief.
Yes.
Mm.
God knows where Adam is this week.
I don't care where he is. He's not in my ears. This is good.
He's rewiring his brain, I think. What a mess. So yeah, that was all handled quite nicely.
Mm.
Obviously, we had to have a bit of Alice creeping in sooner
Yeah.
or later, and I did notice, as I said, I'm a little bit of a spoiler. I like to go in and see who's in the cast, just out of the very nature of the episodes recently.
Mm.
Amy was there, but Alice wasn't. I immediately thought that's trouble. I thought she was going to rock up and say, Alice is gone, but quite predictably, it ended up being a phone call. So this amazing idea. I mean, we have to give props to the clergy of Ambridge, because you've got Shula basically falling off a horse and lusting after a married pig farmer, and you've got Alan with his divine intuition deciding the best thing I can do is send an alcoholic woman to her mates who's a midwife in the middle of a pandemic and who hasn't even sanded her stairs down, and I'm going to send her to stay with her. She'll be able to handle it, and nothing can go wrong because there's only one person looking after her now, rather than 5 sets of eyes on her as there was in Ambridge at any one time.
Yeah.
So Chris has this little wobble, and it was quite obvious what happened there, wasn't it? Like he was thinking Alice isn't here for these memories, this moment where she was sitting up. Yeah, and I guess that's very human. I think that's very normal. It's quite touching the way he said he had a picture in his head of what it would be like, and he doesn't know that it's ever going to be like that, and that is quite frightening, I guess, isn't it? If someone who is so has something as destructive as alcoholism, it's always going to be in the way.
Yeah.
The possibility that it can shatter everything
Yeah.
that's going on. Sorry, this is very heavy.
It's right. I was just going to say I did a really crass tweet about that where I said, "Look, none of us know what the future holds. Shut up, Chrissy." Adding to the doom. Yeah, it was quite sweet that. I thought Susan as well. She was like, "Don't worry, you can film it. It's fine."
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're really fantastic, Mum." Mentioning that photography has been invented and my phone can film things.
Yeah, and it was the idea that, you don't have to send it straight away.
Mm.
Hold it back and send them all through in a massive flurry about in 12 years' time. Just check she's got enough storage on her phone when it comes through.
Mm.
But so Amy's talking with Chris. She's very evasive from the off, wasn't she? Something just didn't seem right there.
Yeah, again, I find this slightly peculiar. I mean, when I listened back to last week's podcast, I said peculiar about 50 times. So I'll try and let that be the only time I use it this week.
Okay, if there's any more peculiars, I'll bleep them out.
Yeah, just hurt me or something. Just that no one has thought to check in prior to this. That's one thing, to say, how's it going, with the alcoholic living with you. Also, that Amy's not said to Alan, it's not working, this has to stop. And that Chris was very surprised, kind of going, oh, it's not really working out, is it? Has she been drinking? Of course she's been drinking. Why did you think that this would be brilliant and great for Amy, great for Alice? End of drinking, fine.
Yeah, what do we think the time frame is? Was it last week that she left to go there, or was it even the week before? I think it was the
Don't
week
know.
before, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I think maybe we didn't have an Alice week, did we, last week? So
No.
that felt like a relief. So yeah.
So Amy says it started off well, kind of. Then they sanded the stairs and bonded over that. And it was just that whole thing about she started to get a bit of a snarl in her voice, didn't she? I mean, we all know what that Alice sounds like. We've heard her forgetting the keys and just throwing a brick through the window to come home. That was a bit over the top. Yeah, so it's sadly predictable, isn't it? But Chris has seen the light. Amy obviously is, like you said, there was a bit of pride at stake, or just, I mean, it was really unfair on her, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Hugely. But you do wonder, like, if Chris had rung and got through to Alice, what on earth would he have been saying? Hi, are you
Yeah.
okay? Not really, no.
Yeah, it would have been quite monosyllabic, wouldn't it? Or
Mm.
depending on her mood. I mean, Alice can be very much like the teenager being interrogated when she
Mm.
wants to be. It wasn't a great project, let's face it. And I think Alan should be taken out into the village green, put in stocks and pelted by all of the Carters and all of the Aldridges for just being so terrible at his job.
Do you think Alice had said, if Chris rings, tell him I'm not here? Because obviously she was there, but she said she's gone out for a walk, and then you could hear her.
Possibly. I
Yeah.
thought that might have been the case, and Amy didn't know what to do.
Mm.
But yeah, it was very, very clearly Porky Pies, wasn't it? When she was like,
Yeah.
"Oh," and he was like, "What's that?" with his supersonic hearing. She could have just lied at that point, couldn't she? But
Yeah, it's the cat.
yes, the cat just let itself out the door. So she'll be coming home. Alice is coming home, and let's see how that works out.
Yeah. Speaking of home, and again about Neil, he's definitely, you said about him going weird with Shula before the horse falling off him.
Yes.
He just doesn't want to be at his own house, does he?
Nope.
Really? That's driving him hugely towards anywhere, probably. I mean, Shula is where he's going to, but he just can't wait to get away from the domestic situation and the smelly nappies. And poor old Susan, when she said, oh, don't you want to be, she'd been and visited Shula, didn't she? And he was quite surprised at that and said, don't you want to go and see how she is? Or would you rather be here with me and Martha? And he went, no, it's all right, I've got to take her phone back. I'm off.
Yeah, she set him up a bit there, didn't she? Whether she meant to
Yeah.
or not.
Was it a test?
Maybe. And Chris said, is Dad all right? Because obviously when Shula had a wobble and threw him out, when she spilled water over herself, and Neil was like, "Oh, all those clothes are going to have to come off now, Shula." Yeah, and Susan was saying it was nice to have the three of us together, or maybe it was Chris said that, but they referenced the fact that Neil was very quiet. So he was obviously sat there stewing.
Yeah.
Maybe, like I said, maybe I've been unfair to Neil because earlier in the week I was like, Jesus, don't call the horny police. Call the bloody horny SWAT team or the horny army. He's lost it. He's completely lost it. But maybe that was a misdirection. And all along, it was Shula because Alistair came round not to put her down or to fill her up with Ket. He came round to, I guess, just to be a helpful ex.
Yeah.
But then was that the only reason he came round? He came round just a social visit, wasn't it?
I can't remember. Yeah. Well, to spot ladders mainly, wasn't
Yes,
it?
to do his kind of deduction.
But also Shula has so many people around her who can help out as well. Let's not forget. A whole family are in the village and can easily help her. So that again is, Neil overly fussing is totally unnecessary for Shula, really.
Yeah, I liked the wording when they said after she left hospital, they took her to the stables.
I know. I mean, we don't like her, but that's a bit unkind, isn't it?
Yes.
She's just had an accident.
Do you want me to fluff your hay for you, Shula?
He played the over fussy thing very well, didn't he? The actor. It was bloody annoying. Lots of people on Twitter were like, suffocatingly fussy, like a bit like Chris what used to be with Alice.
I mean, this storyline is doing something which, if you'd have told me 2 or 3 years ago was possible, I wouldn't have believed you. I feel sympathy for Susan, which I've never found
Oh.
her a particularly sympathetic character. For a long time, yeah, she's the gossip. When she blabbed to the Echo reporter about Philip, I was like, well, I didn't like how that affected
Yeah.
Neil afterwards, but I was like, yeah, that is kind of your comeuppance. You reap what you sow. But
Yeah.
I'm actually starting to feel really genuinely sorry for her in the middle of all of this storyline. And I really hope. How do you think it's going to come out? Sorry, I was going to say,
I think
just to end that off, I just say I really hope that this doesn't end up being something that like breaks her heart or drives her and Neil apart. But how
yeah.
do you now that Alistair knows? She was just thinking, do you know when I really fancy you? When I've been thrown off a horse.
I think, yeah, to answer your question, how do I think it's going to come out? I think the name you've just mentioned is going to be key, Alistair. He's going to blab, I think, at some point. But yeah, you should feel sorry for Susan. I feel sorry for Susan. She's there with the shitty nappies. And, Neil might not be getting any sex as he's listening to Jazza. Probably, nor is Susan. Susan's not marching off to the nearest bloke and sort of declaring love because home life's not very great, is she?
No.
It's naughty of Neil. Don't like it at all. I don't like that. I don't like Neil either. He's usually lovely. It's really throwing everyone off kilter that we're not liking Neil's behaviour.
Yeah, I think actually if I'm honest with myself, it probably is more that as well. That it's making me be annoyed with Neil.
Yeah.
Rather than, and right behind that is feeling bad for Susan because of how Neil is treating her. And yeah, maybe, I mean, we talked before, didn't we, that the chain of gossip might go from Alistair. Well, Alistair's now he's got it from the horse's mouth.
Right.
So yeah, but so maybe he tells Jim, and it becomes a gossip around the house. Jazza gets wind of it, as we said with Susie, and then he goes back to Neil, or maybe Jazza mentions it to Tracy.
God, it's so weird, isn't it? Or Shula will confess to Alan, and Alan will just go round the village with a loud hailer telling everybody. But I just think it's poor bloody show for Susan. I'm just thinking again about it. It's like in those black and white films where it's also almost like a gaslighting situation. Not quite, but when Susan was getting a bit worried about Neil and Shula getting together and so on. And it was all of this, no, don't be daft. That's not happening. Of course it isn't. And actually, it might. So she's going to then, those films where they're sort of going, I'm not crazy. That definitely was happening.
Yes.
And we all can see that it was happening, but everyone around the person involved is like going, "What are you talking about? No, it's all fine."
Yeah, I mean, feelings about Neil and Susan aside, don't get me wrong. I quite like the fact that we suddenly got something a little bit saucy with Shula.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good touch because there's a character arc required there, isn't there, to
Mm.
kind of bring her back into being relevant? Because I couldn't give two shits about her becoming a vicar, if I'm honest. I mean,
Oh God, no.
this idea that she was going to go down to the inner city projects in Birmingham, like Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds, and kind of teach all these gangs the way of the Lord.
Oh, yeah. I would have actually quite liked to hear her trying to do that and struggling appallingly. That would have been
Yes.
great.
So poor Birmingham, they're missing out. So
Mm.
Saint Shula is not going to be coming. How long has her meeting been her placement been postponed
They
for?
said several weeks, I think, something like that, wasn't it? So she's really cheesed off about that. She was so looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, she seemed to be cheesed off about that, but really, it was like
Mm,
the primal stirring watching Neil Carter.
yeah.
Um,
I think she threw herself off that horse on purpose. Nothing spooked Rowley. Rowley was fine. She purposefully used her mobile phone, jumped off the horse onto her head, so that Neil, who she could see across the field because he was waving at her, would come and, clutch her to his heaving, pig stinking chest.
yeah,
And yeah.
I'm getting a stalk on listening to you put it like that, Kerry.
And she's lusted after nothing more than for him to feed her lasagna in her bed.
Yes, I know. There is this thing with the two of them as well. He brings her phone back, and she's like, "Oh,
Mm,
I'm surprised it's still working." I was like, "Well, you were thrown from a horse in a
yeah.
field, which is predominantly grass."
Mm.
I mean, I've launched my phone at hard surfaces when a sporting thing has wound me up, and
Oh, Matthew,
yeah,
have you?
normally the floor.
Mm,
Generally, the phone is the thing in your hand, isn't it? If you go online, you will find YouTubers who do live streams during football matches. When
uh,
something really annoys them, they will look around the table for something to throw, and it nearly almost ends up being their phone.
oh,
Yes,
yeah. She probably just smashed that on a rock on purpose to make it look like more of an accident. She made this whole thing up just to get with Neil.
how do you think Alistair took it overall?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he has shown potential jealousy before, but he seemed quite calm this time, didn't he? He's probably tired of it all.
Yeah, I think there's an element of him. It's beyond jealousy, I think, isn't it, with Alistair?
Mm,
I think he's just like, Christ,
resigned to
yeah,
it all.
you and Neil. I think he's just, or he's secretly going to love the gossip, and he's going to go back and
Mm,
tell Jim. Jim, a year or two ago, would have been rubbing his hands at this.
yep. Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's had a change of heart regarding Shula, but who knows? Maybe this might kick it all back off again.
It's going to really test Shula's faith, this, isn't it? Yet again, because, like you mentioned, she's got the hots for a married bloke. She's told someone about it. I think someone on Twitter was saying about, even the thought of this in the eyes of the church is not great, that she's even thinking this in terms of her ordination.
No, exactly.
Mm. I
What do
mean,
you think happens if she goes to Alan with this
mm.
confession?
Well, confession's a very odd thing, isn't it? So, it's
Well, I mean, generally,
confidential, obviously.
yeah, I was thinking more in line of just not actually going into the confession box. She's C of E, isn't she?
But just as a concept, it's an interesting one, isn't it? If she does speak to him, he won't be able to sort of pass it on to anybody and go, right, get her off the course. She's not suitable.
Yeah, I don't know. I always have this thing with Alan. Is like he's trendy vicar, isn't he? I think he might have it in his wheelhouse to, like you
Mm.
said, just drive around the village with a boombox on the back of his
Yeah.
motorbike, letting him.
Unclean, unclean.
Yes, it remains to be seen. I mean, it's been left hanging, hasn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, obviously we signed off tonight with Amy and Chris chatting, but this whole thought that Shula had, I might never see Neil again. That was the thing that was most prominent in her mind.
This is quite a momentous Archer's moment, honestly. Props to the scriptwriters. I know you said it's nice to hear Shula having a bit of sauciness in her life. I'm not thinking of it in that regard. I'm thinking this is quite momentous, isn't it? That Shula has just actually declared now that she's got a thing for Neil.
Yes.
It was quite jaw-dropping, wasn't it? It was like, God, I was not expecting her to be the one to say this.
Yeah, I was hoping she would, but I didn't think they were gonna go down that path. And God knows how Peter's taking it, because his worst. I mean, he said he would actually go out into the garden and scream constantly if Neil and Shula had an affair. Now they're not quite there yet, but I mean, luckily, maybe he listened tonight. He is in a field, so I mean,
He is.
If you're camping somewhere in the Leicester area and you see a blonde chap standing in the moonlight howling primally, that's probably our Peter.
It's Shula's fault.
Yeah, blame Shula. She's the one that did it. So, any other takeaways from this week? I mean, we had the very exciting story.
Very good, Matthew.
Yeah, brilliant, isn't it? I don't just put this stuff together on the spot. But that joke I did.
Yeah, did you?
Be clear.
I just had visions of David, picking up every egg that he touched and just it bursting because he just doesn't know his own strength.
Yes.
And actually, the eggs are fine, but he just keeps crushing them by accident.
Yeah, it was reminding me. Did you ever watch Father Ted?
Yes.
There was one priest that would come round and he was obsessed with shoddy building work, but he would just come into the house and rip things apart that were actually structurally sound. He was like, look at this fucking cowboy's dead, and would just start ripping the mantelpiece down. He would break the height. And I felt David, he went into the hen house, whatever, and just started crushing
smashing everything.
And they were all over his front when he went to chat to Ruth.
I know Ruth was like, what's that all down your front? Egg. Yeah. Maybe he's done all of this on purpose. He's jealous of Josh's success. He wants to smash all the eggs.
Yeah, it was a little bit strange, that storyline. I guess, interestingly enough, first time in a while there's been a proper agricultural animal story in there related to like veterinary science or
vaccinations and all that stuff.
Vaccinations. He didn't. They vaccinated. He didn't give them the boosters, right?
That's it. Yeah, he cut corners, and a couple of the hen houses he didn't do the boosters. Naughty Josh. But then it led to a discussion, didn't it, about I'm not the first Archer to up, basically.
Yes.
And then he listed loads of things that all the Archers had done. Not all of them, but enough.
Yeah, and I like the bit he just for good measure, Auntie Shula threw herself off a horse.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, rub it in, why don't you? Pip spread something around the village. It was the outbreak, wasn't it? But yeah, he was saying the Archers all make errors of judgment. So what I thought was interesting in all of that is that he's going to, very sarcastically, well, obviously I'm going to get out of date unmarked eggs, pass them off as my own, but that was all a smokescreen for just winding David up. I thought, hang on, isn't that what Eddie did with the turkeys and never got caught for it?
Yeah, and actually, what he is going to do is not that far from that, is it? Although he's going to reveal it, he's going to declare it, if you like, to the customer, which is Borchester Catering. I've just had a thought.
Go on.
Borchester Catering. And catering was mentioned, wasn't it, as well? Because Ruth said that Steph What's-Her-Face had called with a query about the catering.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think there's going to be egg mayhem at the wedding catering? They're all going to shit themselves in that newly swept yard that Ruth dealt with. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we know what a deviant Steph Casey is. If they all started cacking their pants, she'd be like, I'm into this shit.
Literally.
Yes.
No, but do you know what I mean? Is this an overthinking thing? Just
that there's going to be some massive listeria or salmonella E. coli outbreak.
Yeah, he's palming off dodgy eggs to Borchester Catering.
Okay, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, how bad is it if you eat dodgy eggs?
I mean, it can be pretty bad.
Edwina Curry did all the eggy stuff, didn't she?
Listeria, 1988 that was, wasn't it?
Don't know the year. I don't remember years of egg problems.
I think it was 88, but I'm willing to be proved wrong on that. There are certain, we were saying off air, like my dad started producing eggs. Well, he hasn't been producing them.
Jesus,
he hasn't been laying them.
The modern marvel.
Some members of his household have got, I think, some rescue hens that are laying eggs. Maybe there's. My dad called me earlier. I was doing the second listen along actually when he called me, and I was listening on my phone, so I knew someone was calling because immediately the phone goes silent. And I picked up and I said, "Well, look, I'm in the middle of listening to the Archers." And he went, "Anyway, what's up? Anything?" And I was like, "Well, Josh is having problems with his ex. Shula's been thrown from a horse." He was like, "I'm not talking about the Archers. Like, what's going on with you?" But we did get into a little conversation about what might be the problem with the hens and the eggs. So,
yeah, it was mentioned about it could be calcium stuff. But anyway, they did say it was infectious bronchitis, didn't they, or something?
Funny, they throw in something that has a little bit of a vaccination thing in there as well.
Yeah,
isn't it?
It's a little subliminal message to us all to get double vaccinated, isn't it? So that we don't lay dodgy eggs.
There was another thing as well, which I don't know if you picked up on, but it's certainly something that you've been mentioning. David and Ruth were discussing Ben, and they said he hasn't been mentioning Evie very much.
Oh, yeah.
And you were very much of the mind that Ben and Rory might cop off at some point. So is maybe Ben a little bit distracted Shula style?
Yeah, could be. After that night clubbing, I mean, who wouldn't be?
I know.
Yeah, it could well be leading to that, couldn't it? Really. They're mentioning that Rory's come out to his mum and dad over the Cluedo. Perhaps there's going to be some marvellous conjoining.
Maybe there is something afoot there. Remains to be seen.
Could be.
Any celebrity videos this week, Kerry? Daniel Day-Lewis sent you a video pretending to be someone called Geezer Soze or anything like that?
No, it's been fairly quiet. I've barely been on Twitter of late, but obviously whenever I do go on there, celebrities just reply to me. So no, they don't. Hey, speaking of celebrities, they revealed which celebrity it's going to be at the Fate, didn't they? It's not Susie Dent. It is, I wrote her down.
Steph McGovern.
That's it. Yeah, I like her. She's that northern blonde woman, isn't she? She's a presenter.
Is she the one that got a new show on Channel 4 and for some reason it didn't do very well with the critics?
Yeah, she did get a new show. I didn't ever watch it. It was kind of a lunchtime thing, wasn't it?
Yes, it seemed that everyone was determined to give it a kicking before it even got up and running. So they were just constantly reporting the viewing figures of the show, which I think was quite unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we never boast about our thousands of listeners on here.
No, well, we wouldn't because there aren't thousands of listeners. Yeah, I like her though. She's a canny lass, isn't she? Like her.
I've seen her on Have I Got News for You?
Yeah.
So was she revealed, or was it? I thought that was just speculation.
No, someone said it was mentioned at the Fate meeting, wasn't it? Neil and Jazza were talking about it at the very beginning of Monday's episode. I think Neil directly asked, who's it going to be then? And Jazza said Steph McGovern.
I mean, they've got previous with having, like you said, when Ryan was on, that Wogan opened the Fate one year, didn't he?
Yes. Oh, how will Linda feel when it's not her? Just realised.
Does she have the final say on excuse me, on signing off on who does it, or is it far more democratic than that?
In her mind, she does, doesn't she? She has the final say about everything in her mind. I don't know. I don't care, actually. Do you?
I don't really, because, we were saying earlier about how much you love those scenes where they're all around the table. So we had Jennifer, Brian, and Rory this week. Are they doing that remotely? Because if they are, because Ryan was saying, they don't get to see each other because a lot of those scenes are done done remotely from their studio, and then it's pieced together. I presume they do much like we do. Maybe they do it on the same stream or whatever. But even if they got a celebrity in, they're not going to be in the studio with them, are they? Sorry to break the magic that there is a studio where they record these things.
No, but I thought they did start going back to the studio a bit for some of them.
I don't know. I'd have to check that. I haven't seen many photos. Because I know Ryan certainly said, I felt that he said that his scenes, he wasn't doing them face to face.
I think it's perhaps changed. It's a fluctuating situation, isn't it? And I think they did at some point get back. I can remember it being like, oh, it's so nice to actually be having other people. They were kind of socially distancing, but in the studio at one point. Not many of them, but I think they were doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it'd be nice to, if there is a celebrity, for there to be some interaction with them. It remains to be seen. When is this bloody fate anyway?
I don't know, and I don't care. Honestly, because that's going to be the Montbéliard papier-mâché judging what's name, isn't it?
Oh, the
That'll all be
scarecrow
happening.
competition.
That's it, scare cow. Yeah.
It's got to be soon, isn't it? They've been building it up and up.
I can't believe we can't remember.
So I noticed last week when we signed off, we were very good with giving out our socials. We didn't give the email. So if you
Did we not?
we didn't, but we were giddy. That's what it was.
Oh.
But if you want to email us any comments you have about the show, anything that you like or dislike, then put it into writing and send it to hello@thecidershed.com, isn't it? I believe that's the email.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it'd be nice to do that rather than leave a review where you criticise us.
Yes.
Honestly, it was a funny old review that. Do go and have a look, everybody, if you wish to. Someone left us a 3-star review, but it was a funny one because within that review text, they kind of said they prefer us to other Archers podcasts, so that's lovely. And they'd rather we didn't have actual guests on. They just want it to be us talking. So really complimentary, and then gave us 3 stars for having had 2 guests on in however many months we've been doing it, 4 months, something like that.
Yeah, I know. They deducted 2 stars off a 5-star review as a punishment.
Yeah.
But everyone has their own opinions. I thought that was it was kind of funny in its own little way, wasn't it?
It was. We laughed a lot about it, and just however, rather than perhaps doing that, just write to us and say, hey, don't have so many guests on, I really like your podcast.
Yeah, so hang tight. We're not what were we accused of? Star chasing, wasn't it? Or stargazing?
Something like that.
Fear
Yeah.
not, trusted listener. You're far more likely to be stuck with us 3 than you are listening to the glitterati of Ambridge.
Exactly.
People do, on balance, people do like to hear from an actor now and again. And the Ryan episode, just the love that got, as we said, it cannot be denied.
Yeah.
So
Stop it, Matthew. We're not allowed to talk about
sorry.
that happening, or we'll get more bad reviews.
If you don't want to deduct 2 stars from a 5-star review, go into iTunes and write a 5-star review saying how much you love the pod. And if you feel compelled to get in touch via Twitter, what's the Twitter handle, Kerry?
It's at the Cider Shed Pod. Yeah, it's right good fun there. I love it. So have a little look. You'll probably see it in the tweet-alongs because we're always tweeting along to all the episodes. But yeah, come and join our merry gang.
On our Facebook group, which is the Cider Shed Podcast, we had a little bit of chat about spinster. Some people got in touch about the word spinster, actually pointing out that there is a quite large feminist, I think it was Lisa pointed out, there's quite a large feminist female social media site called Spinster that named itself in an attempt to reclaim the name almost. So that was interesting. That I thought that might have some kickback. We were also accused on there, you and I, Kerry, we were left in charge of the shed. And particularly but mine as well, malevolence towards Shula. Benedict got in touch to speculate that we had built a wooden effigy of Shula while Peter was away, and were entirely responsible for her being thrown from Rowley. A little unfair.
Oh, I don't know, not far off the mark. I've definitely got a voodoo doll here.
Okay.
Made of beef. My beef order this week I've formed into Shula.
Yeah, to Shula, she must eat a heroic amount of beef.
Yeah, do cancel my beef order. It's the first time we've heard her having a beef order. Suddenly she was marching in, getting the beef order, cancelling the next beef order. I simply can't cook anything because I have to go to Birmingham.
Sounds a little bit like it's slang for something else, isn't it? I'm here to cancel my beef order. God knows what.
I thought it was a new silent character. Beef order.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, I'm so terrible.
No, you're on fire. So the only other thing in terms of socials is our Instagram account. Like I said, that's generally put out a few little stories and a bit of publicity before the pod and when we've got something coming up. And like I said, we are going to have a little play around with the reviews that we get. Even the 5-star one that got downgraded to a 3-star. I screenshotted the original review, so that exists.
Yeah, we should show people. It's a really lovely review, honestly. It's just the stars, a bit irksome. But don't worry, everyone. Peter will be back next week as well with us, won't he?
Yes.
Our merry... I was going to say merry throng again. Can't use that.
All of these bits that you're hearing now, this nonsense, he will be editing out with, like a master. So
with a scythe.
Yeah. So next week the podcast will be like 3 minutes long, and he'll rein us in. That's not another horse joke on purpose. Sorry. So that's where we are, Kerry. Thanks for being here again this week. I actually found this week slightly stranger than last week for some reason, but I know everyone has different...
Did you?
Yeah, I did, actually. When I was coming into this, I was like, I'm all over the place. Well, I mean, I did mention, was it off air? I mentioned that a bad sign of things to come was before the show, I got in the shower with my glasses on.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of doesn't suggest pinpoint accuracy and technical brilliance coming up, but for some reason this week just threw me a little bit. I don't know if I was just because I was focused on some other things as well, but I thought it was quite strange. But it was all about Shula, let's face it. It was all about Shula and Nilrin.
It was a stark contrast to the previous week, wasn't it? And yet gave us other oddities.
All right, so that's about it. Shall we say our goodbyes to the lovely listeners?
Yeah, see you next week. It's my daughter's 21st birthday next week, so I'm gearing up for that. That's all very exciting. I'm not really thinking about the Archers next week at all.
Ooh, what's planned?
Yeah. Oh God, so much, honestly.
Is it things that you can't say?
I can't really.
Okay.
But no, loads of prezzies and a nice little trip away. So there will be a week coming up where I'm not on here. Well, hey, you can play that cheering thing again for that part.
That's the guy writing the review.
Well, we're so slick, aren't we? Yeah, whatever. But yeah, see you all next week for sure. We will be here.
Okay, see ya. Bye.